so good. And I will ask the same questions as I wrote in the word page. So
Okay.
nothing new, no surprises.
Oh, it's fine. It could be. Even if they are, it's fine.
So basically, then we can start. And by the way, really, thank you for kind of taking time to answering these questions.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
So first question would be, do you need to be fearless to have daily, monthly, and yearly failures?
So, as in you, as in me, or me, as in
As
anyone?
as anyone.
Well, it depends what you do. Uh, I think, to be honest, fear never goes away. When you have failure, it's unexpected. Uh, some are. Some are expected. Some failures, professional, otherwise, you know it's coming. Even in relationships and friendships or whatever, sometimes you know it's just going to go. One day there's going to be this one bad conversation, and you expected it. So even if you prepare yourself, it's still hard. But being fearless helps. But I think it's also being um, um, apprehending, or at least having a coping mechanism towards failure helps.
Have you always had a passion for failure? You know?
So my relationship to failure, to answer your question, is I think I've always been interested by things that turn around. More than things that failed, I've always been interested in, stories of comeback stories, basically. They call it back on the. I grew up in Canada and North America. They're fascinated by, someone who, for example, I don't know, he went to the Olympic Games, he finished second, or he finished 50th, and then he worked hard, and 4 years later he came back and he won the gold. It's like you grow up with the imagery of people who are knocked
Yeah.
down and who get back up, and it's not. I think people, I've been talking to a lot of people in Switzerland, and they've been telling me, yeah, but in America it's celebrated. It's not that's celebrated. What's celebrated is just the underdog story, the story of someone who wasn't expected to win, or
Yeah.
expected to do as well as someone who does something in the best conditions to succeed. So for me, I think I have a natural underdog story. I grew up with a father that basically built his own career in the hotel business, and he learned to do many things. And I come from a family of crafty people, as in people who just always managed to find a way to get by. So for
Yeah.
me, I've always been leaning towards a good story. As in, I always, as a consultant or as an agent, because I have my own agency, I always aim for projects that had high potential, but that were down on their luck, or at least didn't have the same resources as others. So I guess this is where it led me to great stories and great relationships where when things are better, obviously you know where you come from, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And as it comes from my own personal failures, I mean, I have many, but I think the one I keep sharing, for example, recently with companies when I go give talks is, for example, the year 2010, when I systematically was given. So I was supposed to finish my bachelor in September 2010, and as I come out, I was going to run my first company, which was a digital agency. And in the end, what happened was I failed my bachelor, and the digital agency that I had just started running in July was already the team was gone by September, and it was already losing money at the burn rate of 5,000 to 8,000 francs a month, and it was a disaster. And there's so many things were happening. You're in a relationship, and then you have to make new plans for you finish your studies, and your
Yeah.
life is completely wrecked. But when you're 22 years old, I mean, it's 24, you think it's wrecked.
Yeah.
So it's I've always had a very, I guess, close relationship with things going wrong. I guess.
Yeah, I think it's basically we kind of learn how to act with the consequences and how to change the consequences, when you cannot move the reality of life.
Yeah,
It's kind of
absolutely. I
accepting.
think but some people never do. Some people never do,
Yeah.
and they always, hope, whenever they do something, they hope that it's gonna turn out exactly the way it is in their head.
Yeah. Well, do you think there's a difference between failure in your 20s and 30s or 40s? And people tend to take very personally every failure in their lives. But, well, honestly, I do believe by the different reaction, and like at least I think that the older you get, you kind of more sophisticated with your failure. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
I completely agree. Like for example, when I see the type of failures that I have now at 30, like I just entered the 30 club 2 years ago. I, as you said, they're much more sophisticated. They're much more high level. It sometimes involves much more money. It involves much more repercussion. You have a reputation. You have maybe family life. So it's different. But I think how we react to it when I was 20, you're more brash.
Yeah.
You're much more. You want to believe that just because you do something, you're special. You're special, and you deserve. You're entitled.
Yeah.
Even when you think you're humble. So any failure, big or small, is seen as like how can I say this? It's seen as unbelievable, like unexpected.
Yeah.
I think when you reach 30, and probably 40 is even worse, is that firstly you're more seasoned. So certain mistakes are they're gonna come, but you know how you're gonna react to it.
Yeah.
As in, you know when you're in a difficult situation.
Kind of you have more control.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you have foresight.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're not going to do the failure. It's just that this time you made the decision of getting into that situation, knowing what could happen. So for me, it's really that time where, like, when I can coach or consult for some companies and that are like fairly young companies, I always tell them, this and this is going to happen, and they're always surprised when it does. We say no, but it's not as if I'm not a mind reader. It's just I don't see the future.
Yeah.
It's just that in the context you're doing this and with the mentality you have, I've been there. Trust me, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, great. But if it does, here's what you do.
Yeah, totally agree. Do you remember a time when you just knew that this is it? It is the time to change how you see yourself and kind of you act, like one life-changing moment? Because I think we all have that moment when we just realizing, okay, enough is enough.
So you mean as a person, or regarding failures, as in, or during a failure, or
just as a person, because I think that with failures, we fail, but within the life, there are moments when it doesn't matter, is it a failure or just the period of life, like, okay,
I think it was, for me, I don't really know what was so I pretty much had a career where since the age of 19, 20 or 19, I told myself, okay, I'm going to garner as much experience as I can in as many fields of marketing and communication to become like an expert, to become a specialist, to become a consultant. Mm-hmm. And doing this, for example, I did this always like oversee, like pushing away or not discounting salaries or functions. It was really how big was my job description. And you do this, I did this while I was in a relationship for a very long time. I lived with someone, and you have an organization. She has a higher income because she has a fixed job, so she's paying most of the bills, and you're grinding and you're clawing at everything that's giving to you, and it comes very slowly, but there's this moment where when before co-working was big, you work from home and you try to keep yourself busy, and you're getting older. Like, by this time it's 2015, so I'm roughly 29 years old.
Yeah.
And you're looking at your life and you're like, okay, everyone salutes, the freedom that you have and the little projects that you have.
Yeah.
But you're looking very deeply at your life. And I told myself it was around summer of 2015. It's like, okay, what am I doing? Like, as in, what am I doing with my life? As in, okay, I do events here, I consult with 2 companies, I work for a big one, like, the Swiss television, which is great. But overall, I know that I am not busy 100% of my time. Like, on the 8-hour workday, I can work maybe a good 2, on a good day 4,
Yeah.
and the rest of it I'm like, Jesus, I can do more. I know I'm an ambitious person.
Yeah.
So I guess I just started kicking myself. Like I came back from, it was, I think we went to Mallorca, and I remember telling my ex-partner, I said, listen, like I need to step up my game. I know I am not where I'm supposed to be, and like I want to earn like the freedom that I've taken for myself. I want to earn it, and I started making phone calls. I started following up with people. I started really just, you start grinding, and you
Yeah.
really make sure that you don't just look the part. You earn it, or you act the part, and automatically it started shifting. This visualization, I guess, as how they call it, started shifting. Like it started generating. People started knowing what you do. They're like, "Oh, that's what you're doing. Oh, we should talk about this."
Yeah.
And you start looking for more ambitious opportunities. So it really came. I think it's almost as if I had. It's kind of like an epiphany. I think it's a sum of things, conversations, people you meet. But to me, I just realized I wasn't where I was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think that's totally important kind of feel. Yeah, I've been there. I still cannot manage to do calls. It's so scary.
Why?
But yeah, moving forward kind of with that. At least you see I'm doing that. I'm doing.
You're doing it. You're doing very well.
Well, failure is a scary word, and that's no doubt. But when we see that as another opportunity to start all over and move on and learn, what do you think about this idea? It's like a failure is just another opportunity to do better and kind of be better. Like, for example, when I moved to Switzerland and I couldn't find a job, and I was like, oh, damn it, I'm in communication, PR, and literally I was so kind of connected with what I did and all the experience I had previously. But then suddenly I realized that I'm literally starting from a zero, and I was like, oh, ka-ching, new person is born.
I think it's there's certain when you start your career, you're given tools. Tools, most are academic, some are experience, like professional experience. Some are your background, the languages that you speak, where you're from.
Yeah.
And some also is where you decide to start off. As in, and this has become very clear to me over the last few years, is that, for example, I dream of living in Spain because I love Spain. But at the same time, I don't speak the language. I don't know the people. My network is here. At some point, sometimes, when you're in a difficult situation, you always have to figure out how you got there.
Yeah.
Because the way you bounce back or the way you pivot is also linked to how you use the tools that you actually have. For example, when I failed at HEC, I told myself, okay, I have a high probability of becoming an entrepreneur, but then what kind of entrepreneur do I want to be? Because, for example, I don't have a capital. So if you don't have a capital, I can't launch a restaurant. I can't hire people. So I have to use my brain, my network. And with that, what can I do with it? What can I do that pays bills? What can I do that helps me build a capital? I mean, some people don't assess that these are the metrics, the real variables you have to work with to say, okay, now maybe I start blogging. People say I write well, so maybe I should start doing this. But then what do I focus on? Because what am I legitimate in? Am I legitimate on, well, I always love, TV shows. So maybe if I write about this, people will follow me. But I think many people now, with this kind of very high traffic or influx of information and business models and creative people, they tell themselves, I want to do what he does. And they never ask themselves, what can I do? With the same energy or maybe the same kind of vibe, but what can I do the same way but my way, as in with my skills? So when some people fail, the reason sometimes I think they bounce back is because if you re-engineer what happened, for example, let's say you launch a restaurant but you're not a chef, it'll come down to, well, I'm not a chef.
Yeah.
Sure, there's ego, so you think it's your fault, it's this, it's that, but you're like, I'm not a chef. Or for example, myself, I know I'm a great man manager, but I know I'm a terrible administrator. I hate doing it.
Yeah.
But I have to be on the floor, I have to deal with my team, I have to you know to be there and to
Yeah.
be active. But I do know that if you put me in an administrative position, it's going to be annoying for me. I'm rather more an executive, or I'm someone who needs to interact with people. So I think it's the real thing with failure. The opportunity to change is you have to seize it, because it's not just so much because it's not just a state of, oh, I failed, I'm so happy
Yeah.
about it. It's more like, if I take the time to look at it and do better the next time,
Yeah, you can learn from that.
then you can really learn, because
Yeah.
the next time around you're supposed to have learned your lesson, you know?
Do you think that young people have more of voice now than before, and for them it gives kind of better opportunities to deal with failure? Because, well, I'm from the generation, I got my first computer, I was 18 or 17, and it was so slow. I'm not even talking about chatting on Messenger. So it's like, you fail and you literally are kind of lonely in your failure. And yeah.
Young people now, they have everything we didn't have. I mean, literally. They have, and we had a lot. As in, me, I'm from a generation, I guess, right in between, where, we started to have the internet. We've seen the new models that appear with the internet and all those things. But I literally think that they have so much, what's the word I'm looking for? References now. They have so much documentation. I wonder if it doesn't make it harder for them. We had everything to build. We still kind of have that mindset of saying, if it doesn't exist, we can build it.
Yeah.
And young people now, it's not just that they can't do it, they want to do it. But now they want to do it as well as the one that did it before. We're not understanding how they did it.
Kind of repeating, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that, for example, I'm going to give you a very simple example. I always feel like, okay, so we do the meetups and we do the conferences on people that succeeded, and that's great. And it's not a comment on that, as in, I think it's good to have people tell their story.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I realize over time that they never tell the story from the very, very beginning. As in, they never do a founders meetup. They do a CEO meetup.
Yeah.
So that means when you're CEO, by then you're an employee, or someone hired you to do the job. But the founder, the person that started with the original vision and the original hustle, the one that had the mistakes, or that had to make it into what it is now, no one, like young people, I think they don't know those stories because they don't know these people. Real founders, like the guys who are not, you don't see them anymore because they're either on the board or they're retired,
Yeah.
And I feel like we had that. And they idolize CEOs or co-founder CEOs because of tech. Tech allows you to be everything now.
Yeah.
But I feel like people are missing the perspective of saying, you're going to start at zero. And you need references for that too, not just idolize the ones that made the effort of having you now, that everyone knows them.
Yeah. I think that's why in my workshops I always start from my failure kind of stories. And I always say, like, well, if I can, you for sure can too. It's like, it's possible.
Yeah.
Totally. What would you say to a person who just failed, just this second minute or this week? Because what I get, I work in the integration center, and I have a lot of moments when, we meet people and they say straight into your face, like, I'm lost at this moment. What should I do? And then you feel such huge responsibility, to guide that person. So what would you kind of say for that?
Well, it's always very tricky, because I get that a lot now. That people, like, they think automatically, if you know people that failed, automatically when it comes to failure, they're like, oh, Reggie, I need your input. But I think, to me, the first thing I always tell people is to let it sink in. As in, whatever is going on, there's the very element, the hardest thing with failure is the element of time. It's kind of like a breakup. I think breakups are the best representation of that notion of time. Is that certain things won't get better with time, or won't get fixed, or will get only fixed with time. And sometimes, so you need to take the time to take the hit and most people don't. They automatically want to take a lot of energy to try to solve, like quick fix. When really you're like, no, you're not in a state where you can do it. And I always remember a moment in my life where it was very difficult for me, and I don't really talk about it a lot, but it's when I'm Haitian, so my parents are Haitian, and there was an earthquake in 2010. And I remember in 2010, so we were trying to scramble to see if our family members were okay.
Yeah.
And my sister naturally had that energy to, in this situation, to have the energy to make the phone calls and get the news that basically you don't want to get, you know? And me, I froze. I don't freeze a lot, but I froze. To me, I was like, it seems so massive. Everything seems so big that you're like, the numbers were so big that you're like, statistically, you have to have lost someone.
Yeah.
And in these moments, like, you have to take a moment. Imagine, this is the worst that can happen, but even in a business, even when you get a bad letter, it's a letter that says, okay, like, you know you can do a record, an appeal, you know you can ask for an arrangement, you know all those things, but if you don't take a time to sit down and then make a plan, like make a plan with people that are around you that can help you, I think that's what a lot of people don't do. And another thing that I would add is that I was talking to an entrepreneur yesterday that was, her business is going well, but she's thinking about expanding, but she doesn't know how to do it. And I told her, I think the biggest, most common mistake that a lot of people do is that they ask for perspective to people who have literally no insights on the situation you need perspective on. As in, if I'm a business owner and I'm asking the opinion of someone who is not a business owner, to be honest, their perspective will not go beyond their experience. Unless they have empathy or they have that capability of projecting or using other references. But sometimes you need to talk to people who pinpoints exactly what you're going to, because they've been there. Because they will give you not just like empathy, but they'll also give you tools or tips or contacts that will help you. And not everyone is in good health for some situation. And that if you accept that, then you can really bounce back accordingly, you know?
And then we can go straight away to kind of a mental health, because this is kind of the one of the topics I really do care when we talk about personal branding and about failures. It took me a really long road to feel normal about the mistakes and decisions I do, and it's like, it's okay, you know, to have bumps, but I felt really for a long time guilt and shame. And do you have kind of a recipe how to deal with your personal struggles, or how not to dive deep into stress or annoying, you know, thoughts?
I guess the recipe is, so I come from a family of people who worry a lot. They do hypertension, so they're hyper stressed. They're always, you know, they have to check their blood pressure, and my entire family's like that. So worrying is a family tradition, and I've learned over time that it's sometimes you have to also learn two things. When you're going through something personal, it depends. It really goes to what kind of person you are. For example, I'm a nurturer. I nurture people. I take care of them. So when something bad is happening to me, my basic instinct is to try to not make sure that it doesn't impact them in any way, either directly, so financially, maybe that I never make someone pay for my mistake. For example, I tried to always keep a mistake for myself, like as in financially, but even personally, trying to not make them like bear, you know, like my cross or whatever, especially in regards to family, because the thing with family is there's a reason why, for example, a doctor or a therapist cannot consult a family member or a close one, because technically there is a prisms, so there is a through which you see someone you love, because you hope for the best, and you hope that they're always in a safe situation, and you hope that they're always, you know, that they're always doing good. You hope the best. So when something bad happens, I see it with my parents, their reaction is completely different from outsiders, because outsiders, you can have composure, you can actually take it in, and you can react. When it's someone you love, your natural instinct is to exaggerate it, or at least make it bigger, because you didn't want it to happen to the person. But the way you react to it is more like, I can't believe you're making this happen to me.
Yeah.
When it's really not on you. It's the person. It's your way of showing love, of saying, I have so many other problems in my head. yours on top makes it so much worse, you know? So it's so this is like the first part answer, in the sense that there's pressure on both sides. Everyone like kind of like feels like they're making it worse for someone else. Their loved ones, their companion, their kids, their parents. And for me, for example, it's particularly true. I try to never get people that I love worry about me. Now, on the flip side, by doing this, you naturally end up, obviously, basically introverting yourself.
Yeah.
So turning against yourself and saying, okay, you have to deal with it on your own. This is your problem. Don't make it someone else's problem. But I'll be very honest. When it comes to myself, people are my outlet. They're my outlet, and they're my source of inspiration. So whoever's around me, even a kid, can come up with something, an idea that can echo to me and maybe take me out of a bad situation or a bad state of mind. And so the moments that were the worst for me, and that was particularly true in that period that I mentioned in 2015, were the moments where I was closed off on myself, or at least around my very close circle, and trying not to get anyone in, and not to get any input and share any feelings and share any hardship. That was the hardest on me. When I started doing it again, I reopened, and I could cope with the shame. I could cope with the self-doubt. I could cope with the self-loathing. I could cope with it better, because in the end, people's echo, it wasn't really an echo, people's response is actually a different perspective from your own perspective on yourself.
Yeah.
So you hear someone say, it happened to me and you shouldn't be hard on yourself. It's different than when you're telling yourself you shouldn't be hard on yourself. Someone is actually making you realize what you've been telling yourself all along. So you're like, maybe it's, if someone else thinks it, then maybe it's true. Maybe it's different. So for me, like, it's among the first thing I say when I give a lecture, for example, to a group or a company. I tell them, like, find perspective. You need to expose yourself to saying out loud, like, this is not going well, or I'm not feeling well, and face the music of how you feel when you tell someone this, you know?
Yeah.
And it's the only way to really dive out of it, or dive deeper in a good way of saying, you're accountable only when it's out there. It's kind of like when you post something on social media, or when you post on a blog. When it's out there, it's for everyone to see. And you can take it back, but someone saw it.
Yeah. As you mentioned now, social media, I have the last question kinda about personal branding and how, you know, we are creating an image, especially when we are someone in new environment, you know, we're kind of creating something that we want to build. And I always have question from my clients, like, what to do when you have daily struggles, you know? And I always say, it's okay sometimes to share, but not too much. And sometimes it's also, you know, good, fake it till you make it, you know? Yeah. And what do you think about that?
I think it's, so personal branding became very big. Yeah. But I do feel like no one has really the recipe, the magic formula for it. Because personal branding started at the top of celebrity, like understanding the spectrum on which public figures now have been functioning for the last, let's say, 80 years, of saying, so we create medias are interested in sharing their stories. Then they had the opportunity, thanks to social medias, to share their stories their way, but in a very controlled environment. When you work in a media, you understand how everything that comes out is controlled. Yeah. And social media and self-branding is very much about discipline and knowing that whether it's during this interview where you still have to be honest, but you still have to know what to say, or on the post on social media, or whether live during like Q&A session during an event, personal branding is about understanding at any time, any moment in time, what you want to say, what you shouldn't say, and what you need to say to connect with the person in front of you.
Totally agree.
So this is something that I think most people don't realize. Like, I've learned this because, for example, I was a media officer for a long time, and when you do PR, you do it long enough, you understand that you need to know at all times, in any state of mind, as in sad, happy, mad, but in any also state of sobriety, like drunk or not, what you should or should not do. And so this is one thing. My take is people need to understand like the level of discipline it takes. But on the flip side, when it comes to actually doing it, you were talking about fake it like until you make it, or you were talking about. To me, it all depends on the personality of the person. Like social media now is a reflection of someone's personality.
Yeah.
So someone needs to be very aware that on certain social media they expect to see that personality, and on others they expect to see insights. They expect to see, for example, LinkedIn will have completely different expectations than Instagram, than Facebook, than Twitter.
Agree. Yeah.
And so someone needs to be aware of saying, one is your friends, others are not, others are everyone. Yeah. So when they want to share, for example, sharing hardship is good, but you have to be relatable. If you just want to share something that is extremely personal, that maybe is more like an insider's type of information that only people who really know you can understand, or if you want to vent, for example, venting is a terrible idea, unless it's made in a relatable way where anyone that's had to deal with your situation on some level can be like, you know what, I'll give a like to this, or I'll comment it, because we don't do the same thing, but I've been there.
Yeah.
And so if people understand the logic is saying you're still using a media to communicate to an audience, unless it's your blog and it's your following, because that's why a lot of people shift away from medias that are not theirs.
Yeah.
If someone is not used to your tone or your style of writing, even video is worse, they will not respond correctly, or you need to ask yourself what response you want from it. It can't just be, I wanted to say it. That's a lie. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a like and comment system.
Yeah.
You need to be fully aware, saying, the impact I want to have is for people to feel the same way, or I've seen the same thing,
Yeah, totally agree. It's kind of personal branding for me. It's literally down on earth. It's like you really need to understand who you want to be seen, kind of, what kind of person you are.
Yeah.
And totally. Well, thank you.
It's difficult.
It's very, very difficult. I really struggle with personal branding. Like, it's easier for me to say to my clients, but I do personal branding for myself too, just because, obviously I need to do that. And I will say that social media I don't use for my personal use. It's literally just, kind of strategy, what I want to give away and what I want to keep for myself, because obviously not everything I can give away, with the struggles and everything. So I think that understanding the tools, like really understanding how they work and understanding the boundaries you should have, I think then it can work, kind of. Yeah, and thank you one more time. It was really a pleasure.
No problem. I think I don't get to talk about those things a lot, as much as I should, and it was very interesting questions.
Super. I'm glad. I'm blushing, but I'm glad.